Welcome to Knowledge and Proclamation. This week we will be going over Jesus's I am teaching, specifically the teaching of I am the Good Shepherd. Now, if you remember last week's teaching, the I am the Good Shepherd comes right after the teaching of Jesus when he says that I am the door. Now, in this series of Jesus's I am teachings, you remember we started off with a sort of introduction where we described God to be the beginning of all being, the source of all life. Remember, we explained that all being is contingent upon some previous being. All life extends from some previous life. And as we trace that chain back, we find that it must start with a life that is the source of life, or a being that is the source of being. We describe this being, this life, this person as God. And we explain that what better way than this being, this life that exists, than to reveal himself to human beings in the term I am. I exist. This is exactly how God reveals himself in the Old Testament scriptures. You see names like the great I am, or I am that I am. This is God revealing himself, revealing his existence to humanity in the terminology I am. We then fast forwarded to the time of Jesus, and we notice that in the Gospel of John, Jesus uses the I am terminology in reference to himself. This is Jesus literally saying that he is God. He is using the covenant name of God given to the Jews in reference to himself. You say, well, how do we know Jesus is claiming to be God? We look at the reaction of the people around him. Every time he uses this I am terminology, they begin to mumble amongst themselves. They get disgruntled and disheveled, and they seek to kill him. Why? Because blasphemy was a capital offense in that time, and they understood Jesus to be explaining that he was God in the flesh. He was comparing himself to God. And so many times we might hear people say, well, Jesus never said that, exactly said that I am God. Well, that is because we haven't taken the time to, as I say, close the cultural gap, close the historical gap, and really look at the words Jesus is using. Because if we were alive during that time and Jesus uses the covenant name of God, the name of Yahweh, in reference to himself, we all would have understood Jesus to be saying that I am God. So we're going to look today at Jesus and his teaching of him being the Good Shepherd, and see what we can learn about God in relation to ourselves. Remember that last week we were in John chapter 10. We went through the first few verses to verse 10. The I am the Good Shepherd teaching is going to pick up in verse 11 and extend down to verse 18. Go ahead and read with me, verses 11 through 18. I am the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, since he is not the shepherd and doesn't own the sheep, leaves them and runs away when he sees a wolf coming. The wolf then snatches and scatters them. This happens because he is a hired hand and doesn't care about the sheep. I am the Good Shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. But I have other sheep that are not from this sheep pen. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. Then there will be one flock, one shepherd. This is why the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own. I have the right to lay it down, and I have the right to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. Now, we see Jesus going into this I am the good shepherd teaching. This was right after the I am the door teaching. Now, if you remember last week, we talked about how shepherds take care of sheep during the time Jesus is giving this lesson. We talked about how shepherds will build what Jesus calls a sheep pen here in this lesson. And the sheep pen, or the corral, was this large gate, this enclosure where the sheep would go into at night for safety and protection. And you had this gate, but it had a small, narrow entrance where the shepherd could actually sleep in the entrance and guard for predators and thieves overnight. And it was narrow, which forced all the sheep to walk by the shepherd. And at that time, he would check them for any wounds, any cuts, any scrapes. And he was able to tend to anything that was wrong with the sheep as they filed in line and going into the sheep pen. Now, Jesus explained himself to be the gate, the door through which the sheep entered, and now he is explaining himself to be the good shepherd. Now he points out two things as he points to himself as being the good shepherd. The first thing he points to, he says that I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Now, shepherding, especially for someone who owned the sheep, was their livelihood. There was nothing else that they were doing in life to bring income to their family and to bring food to their family. And so the sheep were everything. And Jesus points out that you can tell the difference between the good shepherd who owns the sheep and cares about the sheep and the hired hand. The hired hand would not fight off wild beasts to protect the sheep. But Jesus, being the good shepherd, is the type of shepherd who owns the sheep and who is willing to put his life on the line to fight off the wild beasts. So Jesus is saying those that follow him will get his complete and total protection to the point where he is willing to lay down his life. The good shepherd is going to lay down his life for the sheep. He is forecasting here what it takes to bring the sheep to himself, to bring together his flock. It is going to take a shepherd who is willing to lay down his life. And Jesus is that shepherd. He lays down his life for the sheep because they are in danger. We were in spiritual danger, in danger of being consumed, in danger of paying the penalty of sin. Jesus lays down his life because he is the good shepherd, because he wants to secure the safety of each and every soul that is in his flock, each and every soul of the believers that are going to follow him. And so he lays down his life. He endures the danger of sin. Sin is like a wild beast looking to devour us. But Jesus, the good shepherd, fights off sin and gives his life for each and every sheep. That's why he's the good shepherd. Remember, there's imagery here also from Psalms chapter 23. David says that the Lord is my shepherd, And so the Jews around Jesus at this point are kind of drawing from that imagery too. The Lord is the shepherd of Israel. And so Jesus explaining himself to be the shepherd of Israel is really putting himself again in the place of God. Here he is. He says, I am. He's using the covenant name of God, Yahweh. And he is explaining himself to be the shepherd of Israel. The shepherd of Israel is God. And everyone around there would have known that. And so here we see Jesus putting himself in that place. And he is sort of rebuking the religious leaders, right? He says that the good shepherd is going to lay down his life for the sheep. The hired hands are only worried about the money, and they're worried about their own lives. And so the religious leaders see that where they fit in this story. And so there's a warning for us today. Those who are teachers really want to give their lives and sacrifice for the sheep, and remember to point the sheep back to their shepherd, who is Jesus Christ. The second point that Jesus points out in this I am the good shepherd teaching is found there in verse 14. He says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Now, so for the first point, the good shepherd lays down the life for the sheep. The second point is that the good shepherd knows the sheep, and the sheep know the good shepherd. Again, he's drawing from this imagery of the way shepherds take care of sheep during Jesus' time. Now, in the sheep pen, there were often more than one flock. Shepherds would come together and use the sheep pen and the multiple flocks as a point of safety. Now you have more shepherds together, you have more sheep together, and so this gives the shepherds a chance to maybe get some rest while other shepherds watch over the sheep. And there was a sort of strength in numbers there. So in one sheep pen, you would have multiple flocks, which gave multiple shepherds, again, chances to get rest, but there's more points of protection there also. So Jesus is the good shepherd that knows his sheep. And so when the shepherds were ready to go back out into pasture, they would actually call to their sheep. They would call to their sheep, and because they had spent so much time with their sheep, leading and driving the sheep would know the voice of the shepherd. And that is how they began to separate their flocks. The shepherds call to the sheep, and the sheep know the voice of the shepherd, and they would follow the shepherd. Jesus is drawing on that imagery here. He says that I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. He says in 15, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. And then 16, he continues, but I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. Okay, so the sheep are going to listen to the voice of Jesus, and there's going to be they're going to follow him. There's going to be one flock and one shepherd. Jesus is saying that he has sheep that are not of Israel. He's pointing to his salvation work that is going to go out to the entire world. He's speaking to those of the Jewish culture right now. He's saying, I have sheep in this pen, those that are Jews, and I have sheep that are in other pen, those that are around the world. And I am going to go to them, and I am going to call to them. They're going to hear my voice and follow me. My sheep hear my voice, and another they will not follow. So Jesus is saying, I'm calling to Israel. Those that are mine are going to follow me, and I am going to call to the world. And those that are mine are going to follow me. He says at that time, there's going to be one flock of God. All of those who recognize Jesus to be God are part of the flock of God. And there is one shepherd, one man that we follow, and that is Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, the great I am, Emmanuel, who has come and to live with us. God with us through the man Jesus Christ. He is our shepherd. He is the good shepherd that has laid down his life for the sheep. He is the good shepherd that calls, and every sheep that belongs to him knows to follow his voice. Each of us can remember that time where we feel like we heard the voice of God and it was incumbent upon us to follow Jesus Christ. That is what Jesus is explaining here. He, through his life, death, and resurrection, has made a call to all his sheep that have been given to him around the world, and they are going to hear his voice, and they are going to follow him. There's a very old song many churches used to sing, and there's a verse there in that song that speaks about Jesus and his call to his sheep. It says, Jesus, my Savior, the same as of old, while I was wandering in darkness and cold, gently and long did he plead with my soul, calling for me, for me. That's each and every one of us today. Jesus is calling for us. He is calling his sheep. And the scriptures say that the day that you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. If you are a sheep of God, you're a part of God's flock, hear the voice of Jesus Christ and follow him today. Thank you for watching Knowledge and Proclamation. Again, I really appreciate all of you guys who check in and watch these videos. Remember, there's new content every Wednesday and Sunday. So like, share, and comment. I enjoy all the comments I get from each and every one of you. Again, thank you for watching Knowledge and Proclamation.